Please welcome to the stage INSA Senior Fellow for Public-Private Partnerships, Ronda Schrenk.
Oh. Woo, woo. So welcome back from lunch. This has been such a fun day. I hope that you are feeling the energy like I'm feeling, and certainly all of us are feeling. And now we are going to turn our attention to what I think Sue Gordon this morning said is one of the most important topics in the intelligence community, and that's technology. I have been furiously taking notes and listening to all that's been said today. And what I heard Sue say is, going forward to be successful, we all must be technologists. Leaders who cannot lead technology cannot be great leaders. And then she offered us the advice to be the leader who demonstrates the value of it. And I thought that was really, really amazing advice and critical for us all to think about it and take it in. So today our panel is going to focus on women's role in technology in the intelligence community. And we're joined by 4 women in technology-centered careers who are going to discuss why it's critical to encourage, empower, and advance women in the technology field. But the danger of putting me on the stage is I grew up in the analytic arm of the intelligence community. And before we get going, I want to talk about the why, right? That's how I grew up in the IC. Not only what, but so what? Why is it important? And why should we have women in the technology field, right? Not just because it's fun, not because we want to. So let me share with you a few tidbits that I have gathered over the last few days. First, monoculture is not good for business. A diverse workplace is proven to get better results, more accurately reflects your customer client base, and ensures a wider range of experiences. The tech industry, by its very nature, is progressive and innovative. But when it comes to women in tech, it is not yet, right? And that's the great news. That's why we're all sitting on this stage, is the yet part. So a few more tidbits. Women account for fewer than a quarter of the engineers at most tech companies, and technical positions are more likely to lead to senior roles at tech companies, New York Times. Only 11% of all engineers in the US are women, according to the Department of Labor. The situation is better among computer programmers, where women account for nearly 26% of American coders. Wired. A study of 101 public, private, and nonprofit organizations found that those with 3 or more women on their executive boards outperformed other companies on all of the study's performance measures. National Center for Women and Information Technology. In a study by Dezo and Ross of 1,500 US firms on the S&P, female representation in top management improved financial performance for organizations where innovation is a key part of their business strategy. Gallup has found that companies with more diverse teams, including more women, have a 22% lower turnover rate. Organizations with more inclusive cultures also have an easier time with recruiting. Moreover, women employees boost the bottom line for tech firms. The better a company's gender diversity, the greater its returns on average, according to new research by Morgan Stanley. Tech jobs enable people to have profound impact on society by building new products that make the world smaller and more connected. Tech jobs are exciting, fast-paced, well-paid, and fun. Diversity in the workplace, it's not only the right thing to do, but it's the smart thing to do. And that's why I started off with some of the why. When you think about it, what amazing inventions or apps or problems, specifically for us in the intelligence community, are not being solved today because we're not tapping into the power of diversity, and specifically today focused on women in the workplace. The idea is not just to hire women. The idea is to hire women that are amazing at their jobs and for what they bring to the team. So, speaking of amazing women at their jobs, I'm going to pause here and introduce our panel. Each one of the panels today has done their discussion a little differently. So what we'll do is I will introduce each panelist one by one, and she will provide you some insight to her career and what she would like to talk about as far as technology. And then we'll have a moderated discussion where we have a few questions that we would like to discuss. All the meanwhile, I hope that you're thinking about how you'd like to engage with us and that you're ready to ask questions so that we can have a robust discussion. Okay, fair enough? So we'll go ahead and get started. Janice, we'll start with you. We're joined by Janice Glover-Jones. She's currently the DIA Chief Information Officer, where she is responsible for the day-to-day management of a global IT organization with approximately 3,000 employees. In this position, Janice is spearheading a program to baseline the CIO's organization's key business activities while also ensuring continued mission support to her global customers. And a fun fact about Janice that was even a surprise to her front office staff, Janice is an avid motorcyclist.
Awesome.
Over to you.
Yeah. So they came in and they was like, we need a fun human fact about you. I said, I'm breathing. What more do you need? So, so you mentioned, Sharon, that I am the CIO for the Defense Intelligence Agency, and the timing of this is perfect because many of you may have heard, but yesterday I actually announced to my staff that I am getting ready to transition out of the CIO role. I am going to drink some of my own champagne. I am headed to Dell on a senior executive fellowship where I'll be working with Dell as a government employee for the next year. So that has been the buzz.
That's great.
I'm looking forward to the opportunity to do that, and I will still be contributing to the mission of the IC. I won't just say the DIA mission, but the mission of the IC, and the department for that matter. From a technology perspective, about towards the end of February, I actually rolled out our digital journey, right? And as a part of our digital journey, I talked about the obvious things you could think about, right? Everything software defined, everything that you can put in there. But the other piece that I put in there was about the workforce development, and this gets to the heart of it. It's really developing our workforce for the future. It's about retooling, reskilling the workforce that we need. It's about recruitment. It is about recruiting the next generation of leaders for the intelligence community. And I challenged my staff. I asked them, I said, who's going to the recruitment fairs? Because if you don't have minorities there, if you don't have women there, they're not going to draw that. And so they know that there has to be a mix and a diverse set there. And so we're moving down the path on embarking on our digital journey and looking at it. And I just challenged my seniors to say, you know, the workforce is looking at you and how you're leading this and what you have to do to ensure success. And it's difficult because, you know, you can come up with a number of analogies. I've said that we are changing the carpet in the midst of a cocktail party, and you can't break any glasses and you can't spill any drinks. But you have to keep the day-to-day going while you're moving forward. And data and the cyber threats and our adversaries, that vector is changing constantly, and the technology is changing at a rate that's unprecedented. And how do we think differently? And I'm challenging them that with technology, it requires a different mindset. It requires you to challenge your status quo. It requires you to challenge the, you know, well, that's what we always do. That doesn't work anymore. So technology, I think we almost need to broaden STEM from just science, tech, engineering, and mathematics. That is a part of it, but data is going to be in every industry. And so I just think STEM is too bound when we talk about that. And one of the assignments that I will be doing at Dell is looking exactly at how can we take machine learning languages to help us with eliminating some of the biases that we all have. And we understand that biases, you can program biases even into the technology. But how can we do that? I'm also going to be working on an effort of getting more women in STEM and getting more women into the IT and the other fields that as it relates to technology and data. So I'll stop there.
All right, thank you very much. Next, we have DeEtte Gray. She is the president of the U.S. operations for CACI International Incorporated, where she leads all of the U.S. operation business groups to serve customers with excellence and drive company growth. DeEtte is also a former member of the INSA Board of Directors. Fun fact, in her spare time, DeEtte enjoys running with her husband, John, and has participated in, I hear, many half marathons across the country, and is also an avid flower gardener.
That's how I keep saying so. I wanted to tell a little bit about my career and the, I'll say, unusual way I got to where I am. It was that never path, but it really started with technology. And I knew as a child growing up, I loved math and science. I didn't really know what that meant, but I loved math and science, and I hated to read. So that was kind of the easy way to pick technology, if you will. But ultimately, I ended up being a software developer in my very first introduction to the government industry. So I always started in contracting world, was with the Environmental Protection Agency on a contract there. So I didn't know anything about the government, really how it really operated other than like your local government. And from there I became a manager, so a task manager, and then a larger manager on where you're managing 6 people, then 50 people, then 100 people. And ultimately I was wooed to come to Washington. And it was an important thing because my husband, who I've now been married to for 26 years, I knew I was only going to get one opportunity to move him. And so I pretty much said, I'm going to Washington, you coming with me? And I advise many females when I'm mentoring, in your relationship, there is a point, and it's male or female, that you have to make those decisions as somebody's career is going to step back and not, and it is very difficult when it's, the female. And then my husband's a wonderful man, but his mother never worked, and it was kind of an, ego thing. But eventually got over it. It was the right decision. So, but when I moved to Washington, then I actually got into higher management. Every job was a bigger job, almost twice the job I just took. I've just been at CACI for a year, almost twice the size of the one before. But I have always managed technology teams. I mean, everything we do and all the jobs I've had has been managing, anything from IT to Intel analysts to we do, comm support. We deploy people overseas. I mean, it's all technology. And through that, I've gotten the pleasure and the opportunity to learn not only the intelligence community mission, but also the defense mission. I actually get a chance to see that mission almost end to end. Across, and so I've learned all about the intelligence community, what the intelligence community does, and the technologies they use through those opportunities. So it's been a very unique, and it continues to be a unique opportunity. Areas of interest, like Janice said, I'm actually very concerned about our folks going into STEM education, engineering, anything math and science. We have less and less children in the U.S. going into that, and for the intelligence community and the Defense Department, that's a big deal because the people we hire, typically have to be U.S. citizens. So when you're in, college, even when I was in college many years ago, many of the people in our classes were not from the U.S., and so that makes an extra big challenge for us in the U.S. Because of clearances. So I am very concerned about that, and you want us to continue to push, all children of all diversity, especially women, into anything math and science related that helps us technology. So.
All right, thank you. So when I met Alana a few years ago, we were at a dinner party, and her husband is a lawyer. And in my mind, at least, I know what lawyer means. And then she told me what she did. And I said, that's nice, because I had no idea what she had just said. True. And it took me several more dinner parties until all of a sudden it clicked for me. I had been working here and exposed to technology and innovation as the senior fellow that works with INSA's Technology and Innovation Council. Had I not gotten that exposure, I probably would have been years behind in at least my development as a liberal arts technologist. So with that, we are joined with Dr. Ilana Heintz. She serves as the lead of the text processing group within the Analytics and Machine Intelligence Business Unit at Raytheon BBN, which focuses on speech and language technologies. Fun fact about Alana, she volunteers with American Field Service USA to encourage high school students to study abroad and to help them in being successful citizen diplomats. And of course, she encourages them to study STEM subjects while she has their attention. Over to you, Alana.
Thank you, Ronda. Yes, so I went to graduate school at Ohio State, and I had two advisors, both male. And I was studying in the linguistics department, but we had a lot of interaction with the computer science department. And I kind of felt like, well, I want to be a computational linguist, but computational linguist. I'll stay on the humanities side of things. And my advisors said, no, you're going to take the hard courses. You're going to succeed at them. Not that linguistics isn't hard, but also the engineering courses and the math courses. And I learned from them that, yes, I can do this. I can succeed at that. And that was their influence there has been very important to me. And those times where they sat me down and said, you can do this. Stop being scared of it. Some other really good interactions I had with them was when they'd sit me down and say, you're doing this wrong. This is not how we do science. This is not how we write a paper. Change how you're doing it. It was constructive criticism. And when you combine that with the you can do this, really powerful. And so with their help, I did graduate, wrote a dissertation, and I had a similar conversation with my husband. I said, we were in Columbus, and I said, I'm going to DC, I'm taking the dog, you're welcome to come with. And he said, okay, let's do it. And so he found his way here too. Took him some time, but he got there too. And so we came here because I found my dream job, and I work for government contractors in the tech industry, but I also work for the government as our customer. And it's probably the best part of my job that the customer is the IC and the DoD. It's what brings value to my work. So while I've been at BBN, I have learned the power of saying yes as much as possible. When presented with an opportunity, yes, I'll do that. And if you're not presented with the opportunity, hey, I'd like that opportunity, please. So stepping up, or not even asking and just doing, saying yes as often as possible. And also the power of a well-timed no. And especially if the no isn't followed by, I don't have time, because that's not powerful. No, I don't think we should do that at all, is really powerful, and gets you a lot of respect. So that's some things that I've learned. I've learned how to delegate, both down and up. And what I want to say about women in technology, and it's difficult recruiting STEM fields, and I agree with what's been said. I think one of the barriers to women in technology is imposter syndrome. Thinking, oh, I'm not right for that job. I'm not ready for that job. And it's been addressed a little bit in talking about, earlier today, in talking about applying for jobs, thinking you're not qualified enough. Oh, quit it. If you've worked on a project, you are an expert on that project. If you've worked on 2 projects in the same field, you're an expert in that field. That's it. And you just have to get over it. And what I'll say about that is I'll send you to the internet, but if you have not watched Amy Cuddy's TED Talk on imposter syndrome, that is 20 minutes of your life that you need to go spend. She talks very inspirationally about overcoming imposter syndrome, and she also gives very specific methods, short-term and long-term, of overcoming imposter syndrome. And it's very important for everyone in the room. I've seen it in men just as I've seen it in women, but more so in women.
All right, thank you very much. And last but certainly not least, we are joined by Mandy Rogers, a cyber software engineer manager at Northrop Grumman. In this role, she applies advanced mission engineering and software development concepts to enable data integration and analytic efficiency across the intelligence community. Fun fact about Mandy, she's a native Virginian, and she was raised on a farm where she participated in Future Farmers of America competitions growing up. And Mandy and I talked about it in our INSA circles. We have some friends that they grew up on farms and have different talents. However, Mandy, early in life, approached those farm competitions in an engineering sense by helping to make new designs for...
I actually competed in tools competitions,
Yes.
and yeah, it's kind of interesting. I can't tell you what kind of saw is which nowadays, but I used to be able to. If you need to catch a chicken, I can help you there.
Going there.
So as mentioned, I kind of grew up in this farm town in Virginia, and our idea of traffic was when the cattle would get out and you'd be late because you can't get around the cattle. So in my high school, there really wasn't any STEM outreach, and so I happened into the STEM field unintentionally. I enrolled my junior year into an elective for fashion marketing because it was really cool, and we got to take this trip to Tyson's 2 and see the Versace stores and the Louis Vuitton. And I ended up stuck in this computer math class, and I tried to get out of it, and my guidance counselor said, sorry, it's full. You're good with computers, you're really a fast typer, and you've always been good in keyboarding, stick with it, get the easy A. And it ended up being the history of computers and introduction to programming, and I found out I really loved it. It was cool and really, really hard, and I enjoyed solving those really hard problems. So my teacher pulled me aside and said, you have got to pursue a STEM degree and go into the STEM field. There are absolutely not enough females out there, and we need that diversity. So my grandpa, a career cryptologist in the Navy, he told me, you're going to be an engineer. And so I enrolled at Christopher Newport University in Newport News, Virginia, in computer engineering, and pursued that degree, was the sole female to graduate in my graduating class with an engineering degree. So I kind of feel, I've embraced that, being the only woman in classes. And before joining Northrop Grumman, I actually worked at the Department of Energy in the world's most powerful tunable free electron laser. I was the only female for an instrumentation controls team. So we had to wear jeans and t-shirts to work every day, and I showed up in my neon peak tennis shoes and threw my hair up, and I didn't make it a woman versus man thing. I was part of the team, and I was going to get burnt by the solder, and I was going to get splinters, and I was going to crawl into the ceiling just like everybody else. Mm-hmm. So after that, I joined Northrop Grumman, and I'm a cyber software engineering manager in their cyber and intel division, which is really exciting and really fun, getting to support mission. I've been a test engineer, a software engineer, even an innovator, all in support of the intelligence community, which has been a blast. And a lot of zigs and zags and kind of an unintentional, fun, rotational path. And Northrop Grumman is a global company, and I am so lucky that I get to be part of helping break up that diversity in global thought. I myself get to manage about 40 people that are in Korea, the United Kingdom, Colorado, St. Louis, DC area, and Florida as well. So that's pretty exciting. I've had a lot of really wonderful mentors along the way, and I'm really privileged to help out with certain initiatives that Northrop Grumman supports. We have a homegrown initiative called NG Girls, which is actually ENG, standing for engineering, that a junior colleague of mine, Priya Chawla, she wanted to do some fun and innovative things to help inspire middle-aged and high school females that might be a little bit intimidated by the STEM field to really go the extra mile and ensure that we're encouraging and empowering them. I've also gotten to work with advanced cybersecurity students and teach them some agile methodologies for a hackathon for a Raspberry Pi competition where they create a biometrics application, which is just a blast. And you know, I'm a jack of many trades, a master of few, but one thing that I think that keeps me going is that the IC is just so phenomenal, and you know you're helping other people, and you know it's always great to use modern technologies and new ways of thinking to help solve what you might have thought was previously impossible.
Thank you very much. All right, now I have a few questions for the panelists, and then we'll start to turn to you for interaction with your questions. So Alana, if it's okay with you, we'll start with you. How do you, in your role, set the tone for innovation and encouraging modern, efficient development practices in the workplace?
I think one of the most important parts of getting people to be innovative and learn from each other is to work across organizational boundaries. So you mentioned I work in basically the speech and language unit, natural language processing, and related technologies. But from the start, I've worked with the cybersecurity group. I work with semantic web technology folks. I work with, now that I'm doing more machine learning broadly, I work with people who are experts in RF domain, who are working on sonar signals and other naval sensors, more in the cyber domain. And so from the technological or scientific standpoint, that is very clearly wonderful for innovation, because we can use this method on your data, or we can try your data on some new method, and you learn things, and it's great, but it's also great from a process perspective. Oh, that group does their proposals entirely differently. Their red team is way more effective. We should try that. And all kinds of these processes things that you just don't see because of these organizational boundaries that are arbitrary anyway. And the nice thing about, an important thing about working across organizational boundaries is it's an opportunity for you to be recognized by a new group of people who didn't know you have the talents that you have, but moreover, for you to recognize someone in their group who's maybe being overlooked because they have the blinders on. And if we're going to be bringing each other up, and if there's so few of us around, as women, we have to all know each other, and we have to seek each other out and be aware of who is getting that recognition and help each other to find it.
Thank you. Janice, we're going to turn to you now. So you are a very visible and successful role model for women and men alike across the IC. When did you decide in your career, or did you, that you wanted to be a CIO? And are there any nuggets along your career path that you can share with the audience?
So I never decided I wanted to be a CIO. I actually was in college to be a nurse. I had decided that I wanted to be an OR nurse. I was in school, and I did nursing school up until it was time for me to do my clinicals. And I reached a fork in the road because I was working, I had a mortgage, and the program that I chose, the reason why I chose that program is because I could do my clinicals at night and work during the day. They changed the program and only offered the clinicals during the day. And it became down to sheer economics. So I walked into my advisor's office and I said, okay, I can't do nursing. What can I transition to and not lose a whole lot of credits? And literally, I ended up into software engineering. Okay. And at that point, I was just like, I want to get the piece of paper. And even when she said that, she said, do you think you would write program? And I knew that programming was a lot of logic. I said, clear, I'm a logical thinker. I'll go and I'll do that. And I got the degree. And as a matter of fact, I can recall years and years ago, standing in the lobby of DIA saying, I never want to work in that IT organization. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
what happened?
Yeah. So, you know, I've learned over the years that God has a sense of humor. And you can have plans, but write them with a pencil, right? And so I actually ended up more in the finance field. And when I became sound in finance, I was actually more or less the CFO for the IT organization in DIA. And I just started looking at some of this and I'm like, okay, this doesn't make sense. This doesn't pass the muster. And the CIO at the time, Grant Snyder, would be calling me and asking me to fix a problem that was clearly an IT problem, had nothing to do with finance. And I go, why are you calling me? He's like, because I know you can do it. And so when it was time for me to do a joint duty assignment, for those of you who've been around a while, there was this little effort, Jill Singer knows it well, called the Quad, right? And Jill was over at NRO, and the 4 big IC elements were working on, can we actually build a unified desktop for the intelligence community? And that was known as the Quad, and it was NRO, NSA, NGA, and DIA. Well, Grant said, I want you to go and be that program manager. And I go, I've never been a program manager for an IT project ever in my life. Why would I go and do something like that? It was like, you're going, go ahead. And so I ended up over at NGA, and I led that. I had no idea then that it would be the precursor to eyesight. Upon coming back to DIA from my joint duty assignment, I recall talking to General Burgess, and he says, what do you want to do? And I said, I'll go and work anywhere else. I just don't want to be in IT. And he talked to the CMO office, our office that manages our seniors, and they gave me 3 options, and they were all in the CIO organization. And so what I have picked up along the way, several things. Don't be afraid to take, the road less traveled, right? If you look at my career, I would have never written the story that I have today. I started in the federal government as a GS1. Again, I was going to school to be a nurse. I hit every grade with the exception of a GS2. I went backwards one time when I told you I ended up in finance. I actually went from a 132 series-wise to a 340. And I went backwards in grade. And people looked at me and said, why would you do that? I couldn't really articulate the why. I just felt it in here. And I knew that that was the right thing to do at that time for me. And I did it. And I didn't let the noise of the chitter-chatter get in my head. And so I would say to you is don't be afraid to take a path less traveled. Your story will not look like everybody else's story. You have an opportunity, and don't miss opportunities because you're looking for them to look a certain way. And so be mindful that opportunities come in all different shapes, sizes, by the most unexpected. And what you will believe is, it often look like problems, and they probably are. And don't be afraid of them, is what I tell people. And then the other thing that I have picked up along the way is stop apologizing. Stop apologizing for you doing the right thing. If that's their issue, that's their issue. But stop apologizing. When you're wrong, apologize. But if it's them that has the problem, that's your problem. I wish you well, and I hope you can sleep tonight, but I'm not owning your problem, right? And I'm not apologizing for your opinion of something that I did. If I offended you, then I offended you. But if I did my job, I'm no longer apologizing.
Thank you. Very poignant, and I'm glad that you are in the IT business. You are leading amazing change. I told Janice when I was trying to find some fun fact about her that I was having a hard time, so I contacted my friend John Sherman, who is the intelligence community CIO, and he said, well, I've got tons of fun facts about Janice. She's a hard worker, she's amazing, she keeps me on point. She has really helped to drive not only the first version of eyesight, but the current iteration and where we're going today. So I'm glad that you have taken these zigs and zags, and what did you say? You ride it with a pencil?
Yeah.
Great advice. DeEtte, we'll turn to you next. I have a question for you. You have, and I know you know this, an exceptional track record of leading through inclusion, teamwork, and innovation. Can you share with us how you do that? And really what I'm asking you for is to share your secret sauce.
I would say it starts with employee engagement. I mean, you got to be there. So, and you set the example. So it really is, I mean, it's probably a secret sauce. You have to be all in with employees. So, you know, at my level now, I have about 18,000 employees. So I don't get to do, my job is more about enabling the organization and connecting dots. I mean, I came up through organizations of significant size. And so I always remember the individual contributor. I remember what it was like, and I remember sitting, you know, in those shoes, in those positions, sometimes going, well, if they would just fix this thing, if you would stop doing, you know, why do we have to do that silly process? And that, so I always remember the employees in those positions, which are, you know, majority of our employees, and then. And when I'm with teams, whether it's in a review, and it's all different levels. I'm always spotting talent. I'm looking for those little stars that, you know, have fire in their belly, that you know that you need to make sure you grab onto, and especially women, but really just the young kids that are eager and want to learn and have all the smarts. Not the people just talk, because usually the person talking is not the person. The person that's talking to you the most is not necessarily the superstar, but I look for those superstars when I'm in these meetings with employees. But I really, my role is to enable the organization, to remove roadblocks, to solve problems, and on larger, usually organizational problems, and sometimes remove people that are organizational problems. But to think of it that way, which is, it's the same as if you're running a team. Your job as a leader is to lead them, set the direction, and, you know, connect them together. But then as it gets, you manage larger and larger teams, it's the same idea. It's just bigger, and there's more of them. And so that's one of the things I do, is just connect with employees and engage employees and listen to what's going on. I think women have a special tact that we can sit in a boardroom, a conference room or whatever, and you can watch, not that men can't do this, but my husband's actually pretty good at this, but women actually have the ability to find out what's going on in the room. You pay attention to when you're in a boardroom with people that aren't paying attention. You know, that would be with the board or with the you know, conference room when your team is not engaged, the person that's being quiet. And I think that's something that really is an asset that women can use that men just, it's just not intuitive. As I tell my husband, you guys are like this, you pick, you know, men just pick one. I'm being stereotyped, so don't be offended. But women have the ability, you know, we have eyes in the back of our heads, and we, you know, can watch things that are going on in multipass or multi-think. And it really does enable you when you're in those situations, you know, with your employees, or, you know, with this your senior leadership, to understand what's really going on in that meeting or in that team. But really, I spend a lot of time engaging with employees, with teams, and listening. So, I mean, how many times have you briefed people? And most of the time, people are briefing me, and the person that you're briefing, you can tell, is not really listening. I mean, I don't have my phone while somebody's briefing. I just think it's rude. and if people in my group, or you know, sometimes if you're in a long meeting, people are, you know, emailing or texting or things, but you know, people that are typing on their computer when people are briefing, I just think it's rude and people are engaged. But when when I go and have a meeting with employees, whether it's a skip level meeting or they're briefing me, I am all in listening to what they're saying. One, because I typically have to make some kind of decision at the end of it pretty quick. So you have to really be processing what they're saying. But you're also telling them that you took the time to put this together for me, so it is important. And so and it's like many of the leaders in this room, you may go from one meeting, which is a half an hour, and then you go to another meeting on a totally different topic. And you have to switch gears to get ready for the next meeting, especially if the meeting before was a tough meeting. It's not the next meeting's the next team's problem that you have another situation, so you have to shake it off. Sometimes you have to go to another, go to the restroom, get something to drink and just shake it off because it's not the next group's fault. But every meeting, every time the employees bring something to you, you have to give them their undivided attention, and it's important. And if you do that enough times, people will say, and I've done this in every position I've had, people will say, wow, she's really easy to talk to. She's engaging, and it's because it's intentional. I mean, I enjoy listening to what's going on in the organization, but it is part of my job. And I can say it's not all leaders do that. But you do that, and you start to build a culture, and you set the expectation for your leaders to do the same thing. I expect them to be paying attention to what the employees are saying and to follow through on the things you say. So it really is about setting the example. It's hard. I mean, it takes a lot of energy, but I think it really does start from the top, and you have to set those examples.
I think that's a great example, and it's so important for you to say it. For me, coming from the IC, when I first started at INSA, and the first board meeting, everybody had their phones whipped out. Tish is the chairman of the board, and at some point she rapped on the table and said, "Excuse me, what's going on?" There had been some news flash, so everybody's phones were lighting up with little blips, and I was clueless. I was like, first, you're not supposed to have your phones in here. Right? And wow, you guys are all really looking at your phones, and then they started passing them back and forth. And good on Tish for calling the meeting back to order, asking what was the news, since she was doing what you do, leading by paying attention to the meeting and didn't have hers out. We learned whatever that piece of news was, and we moved on. So important for you to do that, and it shows in how people want to engage with you and want to be with you. All right, final question from this round is for Mandy, but before I start, I don't know how many of you have been to the INSA Achievement Awards. It's one of the most uplifting events that we do each year, and I say one of because this one might be right up there with it now. It used to be the most uplifting, but this is pretty darn good. So uplifting that not only is Sue Gordon having a tear or two in her eyes, I would say the majority of the audience, because the recipients of these awards are outstanding citizens of the intelligence community. And we are lucky enough to have two of those award recipients here with us today, and one of them on the stage, Miss Mandy. She was the 2017 recipient of the Edwin H. Land Industry Award in the INSA Achievement Awards for her growing list of accomplishments that have had significant impact across the IC. So, Mandy, I ask you, how have you been able to achieve such success on so many levels? And we talked about this. One, as a woman. Two, as a relatively junior person in the community. And three, and I don't say this lightly, in such a large organization, right? Northrop Grumman, it's very easy to get lost in a large government organization, a large defense organization.
So, I mean, it's such an honor to even imagine that I'd be considered for that award, and I'm still a year later just so totally humbled and amazed that I could be considered in that group of peers who have done just phenomenal things. So it's really, thank you, INSA, thank you to my leadership for nominating me and seeing the good things that I was doing and just supporting mission in any way that I could. But I think the secret to that, to the success so far, has been that I seek out people who bring positive energy to my teams. And that means recruiting people who are technically sharp, but that their soft skills are going to get us through some really tough challenges. They're not just going to turn away and say, no, it's 5 o'clock, I'm checking out. No, they're the people that want to solve these hard problems because they know that lives matter at the end of the day, and that we need to make sure that that mission succeeds. So I think if you take care of people, they're going to take care of your program, and they're going to take care of mission. And I've had so many wonderful mentors that have exhibited that in my career early on, and have supported and really celebrated successes, but also are able to coach you through your failures and your losses. What could we have done better last time? What is that sticking point that we needed to learn from that experience of losing or failing? I also wanted to touch on the imposter syndrome bit. I probably 4 years into my career, I've always enjoyed mentoring, but I was very, very shy and felt like I wasn't good enough when I was a junior engineer, and was very scared to ask questions and just felt like I didn't know what I was doing. I had a male mentee fresh out of college that I was mentoring, and one day he said, you really need to look up imposter syndrome. He's like, you're good enough. You can do this. You should stop holding yourself back because you are competent, you are intelligent. Don't feel scared to ask questions. We're all here learning and growing together. And that was a pivotal moment in my career. And it was a young male mentee of mine that called that out, which I thought is so wonderful, and I love sharing that story. So it's really important that we engage in those mentee-mentor relationships, because oftentimes the mentor is the one growing and being able to see life through a different lens and viewpoint than they previously could have.
That's wonderful. All right, so now we would like to engage you. Does anyone have a question that they would like to start with? See a hand in the back. Please state your name and your affiliation.
Hi, my name is Manaz Taliarkin, and I work for Northrop Grumman. And I wrote it down because I get nervous when I talk in front of people. So a few of you have touched on this already, but I am curious to hear from others. Kind of reflecting back to when you first started out in your careers, is there anything you wish you didn't spend so much time worrying about? And if not, is there anything you wish you paid more attention to as you were just starting out in your careers? Thank you.
I'll start that one. So one, don't sweat the small stuff. I mean, I don't know how many times you woke up in the middle of the night worrying about something that later on you're like, that was just silly. You lost sleep over something. So lots of stuff will happen, and so don't sweat the small stuff. Be organized, be prepared, and things are going to happen. So I always remind myself when I'm in a tough situation, whether it's a big presentation you have to do, something a little scary, or tough meetings you're going to have to go into, and when always be prepared. But I always remind myself is things my mom told me was, this too will pass. The next day will come. And I was running a program in the Pentagon, and we had a major outage. And so, it's the Pentagon, so everybody's mad. It was a network. And I was walking in with my boss at the time, and who was also a great mentor, and he said, we're not dying, we're not getting shot. We're not dying, and we're not getting fired today. It'll be okay. So there's a lot of things you'll go through, but don't sweat. Be organized, and just don't sweat it. And I can't say I'm never stressed, but because people always ask me, how do you do your job and how do you stress? Well, I run. I play in the dirt on the weekends to relax, just to do so, let things go. But you just take one thing at a time. I mean, there are going to be things that come up, and whatever your job is, that there's things you're trying to balance, things at home and things at work. I mean, that are just can feel overwhelming. Get yourself organized. Take it one at a time, and it will pass. I mean, there's other thing, and the next day there'll be something else. You'll never finish your to-do list, so get over it. I'm a big to-do list person, so you'll never finish it. I keep adding things to it, but be organized, so at least it helps you write down. I have a personal to-do list and a work to-do list, because when I do have time off, I can't remember what it is I need to do. I have a wonderful husband that does all the major things that keep the house going, but they'll never be done. So as far as advice I would give, I can't say I wouldn't go back and change anything. As many of these ladies said, and Janice was saying that, I never thought I'd be where I am. I didn't grow up with a lot of money, and I went to college to make sure I could, my mom was a single mom, 5 children, So I didn't want to be in that situation. I want to have options. And so I achieved that. So now the rest of it is just for the fun. So as long as it's challenging, I'll continue to do this. But I will say, and advice I'd give to anyone is that, your family is the most important. When you finish, when you retire, you probably will not talk to many of the people you've worked with. And it's not that they're bad, it's just the reality of life. And so your family is really important. So your husband, significant other, your children, your mom, your dad, take the time. One, they won't always be there, your parents, you mean. But take the time. And I've lived that. My husband and I don't have children, so I don't have to balance that part of it. But we've had an agreement way before I even got in the positions I'm in, that Monday through Friday I work really, really hard. And I'm not always home. And maybe even if I am home, I may not actually be home, mentally home. And he just understands that. So he's kind of on his own Monday through Friday, and that's the way we operate. If I get home sometimes early, it's a treat. But that's just sort of the deal we work out. But Saturday and Sunday are very precious. And so there's been times when you have to do proposals and things over the weekend, but typically I don't work a lot on the weekends. You may check emails and stuff in the mornings over coffee or at night when you have time, but I don't go off and work for 4 hours. If I have to, because there are times that you have to, then I tell them ahead of time. So I'll say, John, Saturday morning, I've got to do about 4 hours of work. Go entertain yourself. And he knows that ahead of time, but it is really important to be fair to your family. And when you're there, turn off your phone. I don't sleep with my phone beside my bed, and I think that's annoying. I don't even have my phone on buzzer because I always know there's something there, so I don't need it to tell me there's something there because there's always something there. I don't know why people, and so but you got to balance those things. You have to compartmentalize things, emotional things. You can't take it all home. My husband is my sounding board a lot of times, so kitchen, wine, conversation, you let stuff go, but you have to let it go, just set it aside, and have fun. It is work. But have fun with it. So
I wanted to add that I think it's important to start feeling comfortable, feeling uncomfortable. I am an ESFP if you're into Myers-Briggs, so I pick up on every little body language, movement, sense that I'm getting from people in a room, and it really paralyzed me often in my career where I felt too nervous or too unempowered to speak. And I think that we need to stop polishing our rocks so much that we bring to the table and just bring that raw, imperfect, flawed thought to that table, because there's some value in not polishing your thoughts all the time and being so paralyzed and over-analyzing that you don't even bring up the perspective that you are at the table to share. So I think that that's really important, that people need to continue to build on and work on. If you are so scared that you can't bring your thoughts, just remember that everybody's here to work and learn and grow together.
I would add to that, it's really important to be authentic. One of the best compliments I ever got, and I continue to get it, is people will say, wow, she's really authentic. I am what I am. I don't have time to pretend to be something else. It takes too much energy. But it is really important to be yourself and be authentic. You're not supposed to know everything. And to me, that's one of the greatest compliments is be yourself. There's time and place for things, but it's okay to be yourself and be authentic. So.
Yeah, I would agree.
Okay. Another question in the back.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
My name is Allegra Scott. I also work for Northrop Grumman. When Janice was speaking about not wanting to go into IT, I thought about an experience I had where, as a high school work study at the National Security Agency at 18, I thought it was great to have a job. But after I graduated, I could tell a lot of people I don't want to go back and work there. I was in a crypto office and with a lot of mathematicians who, in my mind, just didn't have the personality that I thought. So anyway, my big question is, I have the opportunity to work with interns and young ladies who they're in STEM, so that's not the concern, but the big question I have for any of you is, how do we encourage them to want to come into the IC? I think there's so many companies that seem exciting, and when they think about clearances and the mission, it seems a little intimidating or just not as exciting. So I want to know how I can better support those young ladies and be better mentors to them, though they already have the STEM background.
So one of the things that I think that we bring is the mission, right? And if you can help them to understand how we deliver on that mission and what our mission truly means, and giving them an opportunity to see that. I have a 14-year-old niece that I am putting the works on for her to understand, and it's real casual. Like, she will see something and she'll say, "Oh, that's cool," and then I will relate to, well, you know, that's a lot of what CIA does. And then we can have a conversation around it, so it doesn't look like I'm just saying, you're going into the intelligence community. And so I'm telling her now about, you know, why tattoos are bad and all of these body piercings that you that you want. But you have to make it fun for them, and there are a lot of and exciting and intriguing. There are a lot of games, videos. I use a lot of Hollywood to help set the stage for the conversation, so it doesn't feel like textbook, right? You know, The Brave came on for DIA, and her and I were watching the episode, and she was all jazzed because she saw the Defense Intelligence Agency when it was coming on, and then later on in the show, she looks, she says, "Ah, you all do that there?" She ran out the room. The football game was on. She ran and she told my husband. He was like, "Yeah, She was like, "No, you need to understand. Auntie's job does this." And so that led to me being able to have those kind of conversations. And so I just say to be open to how it was shown, and not just sit down and say, you have to be some kind of engineer or you have to be a mathematician. That's great. Like, she's a nerd, but she doesn't think she's a nerd, and I'm okay with her not thinking she's a nerd. But anybody that plays math games, you're a nerd, and so right. And so I don't tell her. I just kind of encourage her. I don't call her a nerd because obviously that will turn her off at 14. You got to be cool, right? So we talk about the game, and I say, "Hey, tell me, how are you doing this, and what are you doing?" And then I just weave other little things in. So just continue to have the conversation.
Okay, another question?
Thank you. Hi, my name's Olivia, and I am a recent graduate of Georgetown, but here today volunteering for INSA. I was reflecting on your comment about how pretty much every field is increasing its involvement with data and technology. So for all of you, what is your advice for someone who is either entering into the IC or currently here and may not be that T person in STEM? What are the critical skills that you need to move forward in this technology-driven sector?
Be curious.
I was going to say curiosity.
Be curious, because we need people that are non-traditional STEM folks, artists, musicians, graphic designers, who can really think out of the box and really are just curious and want to learn and want to solve problems.
Do learn to program. There's no reason you can't learn Python. There's too many resources out there. And I mentioned Python just because it's easy to learn, not because it's so wonderful.
And it's fun. They have a lot of really awesome modules. Like, you can import anti-gravity, and there's libraries called pandas, and Python's so cool. I mean, you can be an analyst. Yeah, so I mean, it's just got the best, they've got the best terminologies for their libraries in Python, and it's so much fun. It's called Python. I mean, there's cool snake and everything. But yeah, I agree. I mean, you don't have to be a software developer to develop software or write scripts.
You also don't have to be a software developer to lead software developers, but you have to be able to see what they're seeing.
Yep. Right.
So you need that basic, and the basics are not hard.
And there are initiatives going on in the IC. I know NGA has the Office Hours Initiative that they spend 30 minutes every other week bringing people together to just go through basic templates and understand Python. And I know DIA has some initiatives as well. And it's just, you can bring whatever background and learn how to code.
I would also say in the intelligence community, I mean, it's in the simplest way, because I always have to think about how to talk about what we do in the intelligence community and unclassified manner. So when you're talking to people to try to sell it's cool, you got to talk about it in a way that you're not, it's not classified. So many people say, I can't talk about it. Well, there's ways to talk about it. For me, I have to talk about my business without talking about the things you do. So, but when you think about I always describe it as really you're catching the bad guy. I mean, we're catching the bad guy with all kinds of different data. And that data now, in the intelligence community, they're working across, across interdisciplinary teams. And many of them are not, programmers or technology people. They're tradecraft experts. I mean, I hire lots and lots of Intel analysts. And many of them they're not in the, a software development team and track. They came from all kinds of different backgrounds. When you're trying to think about what the adversary is trying to do, that's not necessarily a coder, but it is very technical. So I agree, you have to be curious. You have to like to solve problems, or in this case, that's what we do. We catch the bad guy. Yeah. We watch the bad guy. We try to figure out what he's trying to do, and ultimately, watch his patterns. So pattern of life and things like that that's not necessarily, writing code. And so we really want people that have all kinds of different educational backgrounds, experience backgrounds. So you talk about really needing diverse teams. It really is. It takes a whole team of those types of background experience to say, what if he does this? What if he does that? And you want that. And that's really, frankly, we hire all kinds of people to support the intelligence community with all different kinds of backgrounds, and not all of them are in STEM degrees. Many of them aren't. So.
Okay, another question for here.
Hi, Tamika Hollis. So as we move around in leaders, a lot of companies now require you to rotate a lot. Mm-hmm. And so you're acquiring a new team and you're trying to make an impact. I know myself, I do the new leader assimilation, and I do a lot off the first 90 days. In the C-suite, I'd be curious to hear what are things or tools that you all use as you're constantly moving and taking charge of new teams?
I would say, I've taken over many businesses, and each one's a little bit bigger than the one before, so you quickly assess just the situation. So you assess the people, and you kind of do that as the train's moving. As Janice referred to, the train's always moving. It never slows down, and so you're constantly assessing those organizations when you first go into it. It's important to set the vision, set the way you're going to operate, your operating model early. You'll adjust it as you go along, but set those kind of expectations early. But you'll continuously assess. One of the things we do at CACI is we do succession planning. So we formally go through a process to identify talent, and many companies and organizations do that. But it's important to, I always say put pen to paper. You got to write down, who are the top talent in all different levels, and purposely move them. So when I had the opportunity across my career to solve a lot of hard problems. You volunteered, as you said earlier. You volunteer, raise your hand, and say, "Yeah, I'll do that." Or something. You're voluntold a lot. I'm still voluntold a lot. But you have to move people around or give them those opportunities. And it's not necessarily their actual position needs to move, but if you stand up a new team that you're looking into, whether it's an employee, if you're looking at a new employee performance management system. We did that in our company. We got some of the top talent, one that were passionate about it, and we got them to come up with the ideas of how we should do performance management. And that's what we're going to be implementing, is what this group of employees came up with. So there's lots of ways to get your talent into different opportunities and move them around the company. So it is very important.
And I would add to that with, so starting with the end in mind. Whenever you take over a new job, new responsibility, think about that end state up front and the outcome that you're seeking to achieve. And I'm a big believer in the power of vulnerability and how you can use it. Think about everything that we do in the intelligence community. So you have your trade craft, you have your expertise, but that other piece of that is all about relationships. And it's all about building the relationships. And think about the people that you support the mission, but you'll also go above and beyond because of the relationship that you have with that person. And so building that and connecting with your team up front will take you a long way, because here's the thing, right? You're coming into a new situation, a new opportunity. They know all the inside, the outside, the good, the bad, and the ugly. They know it all, and you want to be able to create a safe space where they can come in, have the necessary conversations with you that you need to have, and that you can trust and be able to fix the problems.
Okay. We have a question from this side of the room. Yes.
Maisha Glover, and this has been a really great panel and a great conference so far. So there's been this consistent theme that has come up throughout the day, which is don't be fearful. Don't allow fear to allow you to be stagnant, right? It's what we allow. And I know many of us have felt that way, and there are many people that are not within these walls that have had to overcome some of those challenges. Just most recently, I resigned from a great role. I was the vice president of a large intel group for a government service contractor, and people are just like, why are you leaving? Why did you leave that role? But I see greatness in the road less traveled, this other opportunity. But I experience fear. Sometimes I still, like, I'm about to start something totally different in a new industry. What advice would you give to women, right? I mean, here you are, Janice, CIO, DIA, woman, African-American woman, right? You're gonna go do something different at Dell. Someone may say, what in the world? What, why? Look at what, that's not the natural hierarchy, right? Like, come on, right? And that's what they're thinking about me, right? But that intestinal fortitude, I feel greatness over there. What would you share with the women and men here today about don't be fearful?
Yeah. So one of the things that, so I have my staff saying that, why are you leaving? It doesn't make sense. Why? It does make sense, right? There's something on the inside of me that's telling me this is the right thing to do. I trust my instincts. And then I say, what's the worst thing that can happen? That I come back to DIA and say I need a job, right? I mean, at the end of the day, we can play a lot of thoughts in our head, and when fear becomes paralyzing, that's wrong. You should have a sense of fear to alert you, okay, there's danger there, but when fear gets you to a place that it paralyzes you, what do you benefit from that, right? So I am completely stepping into, I'm gonna be on the commercial side of Dell, not the federal side, the commercial side of Dell. I've never worked in maybe high school, right? But even still, not commercial in the sense of working for a big, huge company and staying in the IT realm and working like that. I'm walking in a complete territory of unknown. So is there a little bit of anxiety? A little bit, but the possibilities and the opportunities that are out there that I'm actually excited, and I can't wait. So you just have to do it, and you have to have that talk with yourself, and you have to recognize, what are you rationalizing? Are you talking yourself out of an opportunity, or actually are you talking yourself to an opportunity? And again, what's the worst thing that can happen?
It's important, I think, to be concrete in trying to get over fears. I have a little book of lessons learned, and my concrete thing there about fear is never be afraid to brief anyone anywhere. So I made that mistake. It was a briefing, there was gonna be brass there, and I was not ready for this, and I made my boss go do it, and he came back and he said, you should have done that. Yeah, I should have. And that was the last time I made that mistake. I will brief anyone, anywhere. Hopefully it's on a topic I know about, but if not, what's the worst that can happen? Here's what happens. Question, I don't know the answer to that, but I will find out for you.
Yeah.
That's the worst thing that can happen, and it's not bad.
Okay.
I would say, you know, you're going to be nervous. You actually want to be a little nervous in things because it keeps you on your edge. But there is true statements. I mean, I've always been, for the most part, and still continue to be the only female in the room. I was always the youngest. I still am the youngest, actually, in the room, in the senior room. You know, people are catching up with me. So, but you know, there is something to say: is don't let them see you sweat. And you know, sometimes you got to fake it till you make it. But just you have to, no matter how scared you are or nervous as you are inside, you got to be confident. You know, and sometimes you have to do. You have to go to the bathroom. You can cry in the bathroom. You can go to the car and scream, but don't ever let them. I mean, there is part of that. You do have to come across confident, even if you don't feel confident. And there's times, you know, I'm nervous about the thing. Be prepared, but you do have to sometimes suck it up and kind of fake it, if you will, because to get through that, once you start, like if you're doing a presentation or something, once you start, it kind of just naturally happens if you're prepared. But you really do have to pretend sometimes that, okay, all that crazy stuff in my head, just go away. And then one other piece of advice I would give, I've had many executive coaches that help you on different things. And so before you do a presentation or you have to go have a tough conversation, you know, go in front of a mirror and do the Superwoman pose. Just stand there like this. And, you know, tell your stuff, whatever it is you want to tell in your head, say, I am great, I am wonderful, I am strong, I know what I'm doing. Whatever it is, your speech to yourself. But just stand there for, you know, like Superwoman and say, I got it, got my bracelets on. And if you do it, it makes you feel more confident, but you're gonna be nervous. I'm nervous many times, but you have to kind of fake it. So.
All right. We have about 5 minutes left, so I'm gonna pull it back. And I wanna remind you, days like today are amazing. They're uplifting. Personally, I get wonderful endorphins from stepping away from the workplace and getting to just nurture myself with information like this. It's wonderful networking, right? We learn. However, it's wasted if we don't take some of the information and apply it back in the workplace the next day. 1, 2, maybe 3 things. Write them down, think about them, commit to the Superwoman look. Mm-hmm. Commit to being okay to ride the pencil and zigzag throughout your career. I heard Tish say, don't take yourself out of the running. I heard Mary Legier say, we're starting to flood the zone. Keep going. There's a way over the wall. I heard Megan Jaffer say, we need to get to know each other as people. Those are all really important pieces of advice that I've heard throughout the day. I open it up to the panel with about 30 seconds for each person. If you have one last soundbite that you would like to offer the audience for what they might take back to the workplace. Yep. We'll start here.
I would say women really support one another. I'm seeing a lot of where we're actually more critical on women for something we see, and we hold women at a higher standard than we would hold their peers that are male at that same standard. Whether it's a superior, a peer, or a junior person in the workforce, stop being so critical on one another and actually support one another. If Mary said we are flooding the floodgates, then let's help push and break the breach by supporting one another.
I would say be a mentor. Don't just look for a mentor, so you have to pass it along. So I would say continue to pass it along. Spend the time, you know, mentoring people, and you'll be mentored too. So, but mentorship is important, and that doesn't have to be a formal relationship. It can just be a casual conversation. But you got to pass it along, the things that people have given to you.
Every time I'm in a meeting where I'm the only woman, which happens more and more often, I think about all the meetings where there are 0 women. Mm-hmm. So show up. You just got to be there. That doesn't change unless you're in the room. Keep being in the room and sitting at the table.
learn how to say yes to things, but also learn when it's the right time to say no, and no is an answer. You don't need to provide a reason why.
All right, thank you very much to our panel.